Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Q&A session with me, ABK from Neo4j. I'm here with my friend Emil. Emil, how are you doing today?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
Pumped for nodes.
Oh my gosh. This first set of sessions were just amazing.
Yeah, they were awesome.
The depth, the breadth, like all the different topics, right?
100%. I've been. It was hard to move away from my room over there to go over here because I was just in the cancer research session just now. It's like,
wow,
man, what an amazing session.
Oh my gosh, so great. And thank you to all the presenters. You've been fantastic from the beginning, from the opening keynote, which was just like so much fun and like so engaging. And then like, okay, then we went through all the different use cases and all the different practical sessions. It's been really super. We've got a couple of minutes now to spend some time together and answer some questions that have come up from the audience. Big picture kinds of questions I think mostly would have bubbled up. And we're gonna start easy. We're gonna take something that you know a little bit about. And this is from Ram. Ram just wants to know, okay, how do I start using Neo4j and graphs in general? You know, do you have any good books and resources? Fantastic, thank you, Ram. Where does he start?
Good question. I guess two comments before I answer that question. The first one is that I think there's a Slido link available so people can keep asking questions throughout the session. We have 15 minutes. So please, add more. And my second question is actually comment/question is like, who are you? You mentioned ABK, but like
ABK from Neo4j.
Why are you here? Yeah.
I'm here to just be the interface between the computer and the person. That's my main role, really kind of overall. But here today, like in Neo4j, I'm with the developer relations team. I'm a senior developer advocate, so work a lot with the community, and also I've been with Neo4j for a while in lots of different capacities.
Wow, 13 years, I think, 2010.
Yes, it's starting to show a little bit of gray starting to come in as a result.
So employee number 10 or something like that, right around that, I think.
So if any hard questions come in, I'll try to field those. Yeah, exactly. if you get stuck, go ahead and pitch.
Exactly.
You can pitch over. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so there's a ton of information available, online, and I guess the specific question was around books. You know, there's the original O'Reilly book, which was published in, help me out here, 11, 12.
12 is
over
around
10 years ago, and then there's been tens of books published since then. You can go to the online content, of course, neo4j.com/developer. Graph Academy has a lot of amazing content. The specific book, the most recent one that I read was the Knowledge Graph book by Jesus and Jesus Barraza and Jim Weber, and that one is just really amazing. First of all, it's recently published, so it's up to date, right? This is such a fast-moving field. Things change all the time. The concepts remain very, very persistent. In fact, arguably they've been durable and they've been the same for a millennia, actually, long before we incorporated them in software. But in terms of the actual practical get started stuff, what's the syntax? The Knowledge Graph book from O'Reilly is very up to date. It's also very pragmatic. It highlights a number of just real-world use cases and patterns. So I feel like it's a really good. It straddles like the abstraction layers that I think are right. It's not just in the weeds. It also talks about kind of the applications and the use cases, but it doesn't just stay there. So that's my recommendation.
So that's a great combination of things to look forward to. That book has got all the information all in one piece, of course. Yeah. And I agree, like the online courses from Graph Academy for just kind of practical hands-on is great to start. And then obviously just get Neo4j and just try it out. And continue to listen to all these great node sessions because there's lots of great hands-on practical advice you're going to get from that as well. Cool, that sounds fantastic, Emil. Okay, this is, also, we're not going to get into the really hard ones quite yet, but I like the way this one is set up because it's very topical, it's very current, right? Okay, everybody everywhere is trying to figure out AI, of course. That is what's happened this year to everybody. What's your view on Gen AI and specifically, I guess, what does it mean for the world of graphs? Yeah. Everybody's being impacted. How does it impact us and like people who are trying to do stuff with graphs, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's impossible to, I think, be in the world of technology today without hearing the roar thunder of AI broadly and Gen AI specifically. It's affecting all of society. anyone in technology, and certainly anyone in data, right? So we're kind of at the bullseye of that hurricane right now. I feel like, and maybe I'll call out a few things. The first one is there's a really great fit between LLMs and graphs, right? If you think about what an LLM is, this magical box. Someone recently described it as it's almost like an alien civilization came in a few years ago and gave us this magic box of LLMs, and we're still trying to unpack and understand how they work and why they work, right? But if we think about that box, it's amazing like at statistics, right? It's amazing at probabilism. It's amazing at creativity. It's amazing at generating language, and it's amazing at natural language, at English. So on one hand, and if you marry that up with a knowledge graph or a graph that's amazing at how things fit together, to fit together, it's amazing at storing your data. The LLMs are pre-trained on the internet, basically, right. And the knowledge graph can represent your data, and it's great at determinism. So this one is great at probabilism, and this one is great at determinism. So it's a really great conceptual fit, graphs and LLMs. So that's kind of my first point. My second point is an important observation that you and I have talked about a lot recently, which is maybe 6 to 9 months ago, the world of LLMs was very much focused on like understanding the LLMs and how to produce the LLMs. Right. And it was the world of the machine learning researchers and like the ML engineers, the ML researchers, the data scientists, the data engineers, right? Like, how do you produce this box, and what's the difference between a world of maybe a few large language models compared to a world of a smaller set of small SSMs, like small specialized models? Is that how it's going to evolve? 10 billion parameter models, 100 billion parameter models, a trillion billion, like a trillion parameter model, like all of the stuff, like how to produce the specific models. That was the conversation 6 to 9 months ago. About 3 to 6 months ago, it shifted, where what I just said is really important. Still, of course, like how do we build even more better magical boxes? But maybe as important is, as a software developer, if I think of this as a singular black box, as a component in my architecture, how can I build software systems that incorporate this functionality? Right. This is, people have talked about it as the rise of the AI engineer, right? Not a perfect term. None of these terms are perfect, but basically if you have a software engineer skill set, not a machine learning engineer skill set, how can I treat this as a component and build systems on top of it? And this here, as part of all this, there's been a particular architecture emerging called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which I'm really excited about. It is today the de facto best approach, I believe, in many situations for giving the LLM access to your local data. 6 months ago, people would have said fine-tuning is the way to do that. But fine-tuning has all kinds of technical drawbacks in many situations, which we can go into if people are interested. It also has skill set drawbacks. It's really, really hard to fine-tune this model. Fine-tuning is it's a fancy word of saying training, and training machine learning models is really hard. RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, it uses a database, it gets some data out of that database, and it passes it into the LLM. So it's still, it's the vanilla de facto out of the box LLM that you can get from an open source model like Llama 2 or Mistral or Falcon or something like that. Or you can get the OpenAI ones or the Google ones, right? And they're unchanged, right? So you can just use them as a component. You get the relevant data out of your database, and you shove that into the context of the LLM. And through that, you've achieved this combination of I have my own internal data expressed as a graph, and then I have the LLM, great at generative capabilities in English, and I can marry the two in a very pragmatic, practical way that any developer can do. You don't have to be like in the weeds on what LLMs work. Like as long as you're a software engineer, you can use them in tandem. And that I think it's this inflection point that happened in the last few months that I think is going to enable an entire generation of new developers building new applications using this pattern. There's a long answer to that question.
Thank you for your brief thoughts.
But that's really, really top of mind. And I think it's going to be so impactful over the next at least year or so. And then, of course, anything in this world is moving so fast that maybe there's new research initiatives like LoRa or QLoRa, adapter learning, that kind of stuff that makes fine-tuning a better choice. To give the LLMs access to your own data. Like a year from now, who knows? But right now, RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, is the architecture for doing this. And it's a fantastic fit for Neo4j.
Okay. I love all that, of course, and as you and I have talked about that. I love the analogy of the alien technology. I hadn't actually heard that before. That one's kind of beautiful. And like what that's evokes for me a little bit is this notion, like when you see it in the movies and like, okay, I don't know, somehow we've gotten a power source from some aliens, and the bad guys usually get the power source and they use it to power their evil machines and stuff. And I always think, okay, how did you actually do that bit? Like the alien power source that we've never seen before, somehow you've got to plug it in to your stuff. Like, and that part seems like the hardest thing to solve. And that's what kind of RAG and maybe these other architectures are going to try to do is like, how do we get that coupling to actually happen? Because there's going to be a bit of a bleed over, of course, as well. Like it's not like a hard interface, like, okay, just plug in here, plug in there, and everything works. It's gonna have to adapt a little bit on both ends. It feels like to me like that's
100%, and it's a really fast-moving field. And we have these, let's call them middle layer, middleware frameworks, right? Emerging. LangChain as an example of that. Llama Index is another example. Semantic kernel from Microsoft, Haystack, and so on and so forth. That try to be this glue between the application and the LLMs. And there's actually a session on that later today. Oscar Hane out of the Neo4j engineering team, together with Harrison Chase, who's the founder of LangChain, one of actually probably the most popular one of these frameworks, is giving a talk today about the Gen AI stack that we launched together with Docker, which is this really simple way of, if you think this sounds enticing, the Gen AI stack has pre-integrated a few of these components, Neo4j, LangChain, technology called Ollama for running LLMs locally if you don't want to call out to OpenAI, for example, in a pre-integrated, pre-configured way with a demo application and a couple of things, right? And so Oscar and Harrison is giving an introduction to that it's such a 24-hour conference. I don't know exactly where it is in your time zone, but at some point today. So if you find this intriguing, I really encourage you to check it out.
I feel like this is going to come back up later in our sessions. We'll probably touch on this topic again, so we'll dig in a little bit deeper. And Harrison, Oscar, you've got, I don't know, a few hours to integrate the alien technology slide into your deck. That's now your task. Okay, let's see what else we have. And actually, we'll keep it at the high level right now. I think we only have a couple of minutes. And so this is another nice one, actually. So thinking just about the graph space, I suppose, what is the biggest recent advancement in the graph space in your mind? Like what's got you excited about just thinking about graphs?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pop my head out of what we just talked about. It's all the stuff that Gen AI implies. And maybe kind of the vantage point that I took for the previous question was, hey, if I'm a developer out there and I want to build LLM-backed applications or LLM-backed features into my application, how can I do that, right? That's the RAG architecture and all that kind of stuff. But there's a bunch of more areas where I think LLMs will touch the world of graphs. For example, knowledge graph construction. When you have unstructured data, we've all seen, I think, these examples of in ChatGPT where you paste a CSV into ChatGPT and you tell it, hey, give me some insights out of this. And it's shocking how frequently it will reveal things that I had no idea, even though the data was my own data. Like really impressive. And sometimes it's completely wrong. You have the hallucination problem and that kind of stuff, right? But more often than not, it derives some real valuable insights out of that. What if we can use that to go from unstructured data into a knowledge graph? There's actually just a session by Noah in the Neo4j engineering team about that earlier today. So that's one example of going from unstructured data to a knowledge graph where the LLMs can be helpful, right? So I think there's much more where kind of Gen AI touches graph than what we've been able to cover in the few minutes we have.
It's a little bit of that side of the coupling with the aliens technology is like, okay, it's changing how we even think about and work with graphs, right?
100%.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. We might be able to get in at least another question or two. Does that sound right? Yeah, it seems like we have time. Let's see what's coming up next. Oh my gosh, okay, and so there's a bunch of great questions, and I didn't really scan through these well enough.
I can offer up one more thing, because I actually thought we were out of time. That's why I rushed my answer. So I think kind of that the Gen AI impact on graphs. And then, honestly, like, this is in nowhere a recent thing. We talked about it in the last notes and probably in the notes before that, right? Which is, the shift to the cloud, right? And this is obviously this secular shift in our entire industry, affecting applications and so on and so forth, right? But we're still in some version of the early innings of that game, right? And today you can get your free instance of Aura, the Aura free tier, kind of up and running. I saw that there was like a digital goodie bag for notes where we give away the second free instance, which is really, really great. But anything related to that, where you can just self-serve and automatically have this guided experience with data sets integrated, just reducing the threshold for adoption of graphs, I think is really fantastic. And the cloud takes away the operations of graphs, right? So if you're not a deep tech developer, right, you don't need to do that, right? And then we have technologies like Bloom that gives it a visual representation that allows non-developers to play around with it. And LLMs can play a role here as well, right? As long as you speak English, the LLMs can help you chat with your graph, right? With the data in your graph and translate it. And so that broader commoditization or democratization of giving access to graphs to more people is something that I'm also really, really excited about.
Thanks for expanding on that. That was super good. A lot of these other questions, actually, I would love to get to, but they're going to be longer than we've got left to get in here. So we'll go a little. Actually, there's one here that maybe I'll pick up on. People have noticed, kind of things going on here in the background, and that we're missing a fire. This is the Fireside chat. We didn't set up a fire, and so maybe between now and the next session, we'll go gather some wood out in the forest here in Sweden. Of course, we'll go chop some wood as a proper Swede would do. Drag logs back. We'll see if we can get time for that. Maybe actually. So this always comes up as a question. Just really quick. When were you on the moon? Tell us about the moon.
This is obviously a meme. I honestly don't exactly remember the background, but it's some version of when the first Swedish astronaut went into space. Christer Fuglesang, I think is his name. Then there were all kinds of pictures floating around on Slack of this guy with like a Swedish flag on his astronaut suit, right? And then over time that evolved into someone like cutting my face into it and adding all kinds. I think there's versions with like Neo4j, logos on it and this and that. So I in no way can represent this as a truthful. This is fake news.
It's fake news. Oh gosh. It's before generative, images like
this is not even DALL-E generated. It's not even stable diffusion.
We'll get an updated version of that then. All right, that's all the time we've got for this first session. We're going to do another one for the other time zones. Come back around for those. We're going to continue this conversation around probably, I'm sure, more LLM talks, more Gen AI stuff, and whatever else you guys post to the Slido. Please add questions there, and we'll get those queued up for the next time around. Thanks for joining in.
Awesome. Enjoy nodes.